Hi guys, my name is Paul Watson, welcome back to my YouTube channel. You join us today for a double header at Alton Park and Circuit of the Americas for the Actrollvision's ProjectCars2 Touring Car Cup for rounds 3 and 4. So you can see here I started P9 in the race, and once again really struggling getting a bit of pace in qualifying. It's never really been a massive strong suit of my game. I've always tried to be as steady and consistent in race as possible, but due to only sim racing for less than a year, I'm really struggling to learn how to maximize the speed on every single track, and as a result really struggling to eke out the last 2 seconds, which is on average how far I am behind the top guys, which just isn't good enough. It's not competitive enough. I'm fighting in the midfield, lower midfield at times, depending on whether or not I have a good race or not, but on average it's mainly lower midfield. And it's a starting point, it's a good starting point considering I've been racing for less than a year, but ultimately that's a massive part of my game that I really need to improve upon, as you know, I've got up on 2 wheels there. And it's one thing that I believe is the biggest weakness in my game is I can get decent race starts across most games, but I really do seem to struggle in getting a bit of qualifying pace. You see me going a little bit too shallow there, getting 2 wheels on the grass, getting a bit sideways, and ultimately opening the door for these 2 drivers behind me to really push on and apply the pressure. And at this point I'm still learning, like I said, still trying to get used to racing, developing my racecraft, and I decided to really just try and fight to keep this position. I lose out on that corner, but figured out maybe if I can get a good braking point into this corner. Unfortunately punting wide, which it's the same driver from the next video, so it shows that we may have a little bit of a rivalry developing here, but unfortunately I bottle it. Once again I hit the bollard, which is synonymous with this track. Those big lollipop looking bollards that are basically made of absolute concrete, and unfortunately suffered fairly serious damage in this race, which meant handling the car was horrible. I couldn't push at all, and so it was just consistently just lapping round on my own, just going round and round and round. And as a result it was a bit of a dull race for me until a little bit later on, as I started getting chased down by the BMW that you can see behind me. He was applying a decent amount of pressure, but he was never that close in order for me to have to spare any more than 1 or 2 glances per lap. And unfortunately this meant for a fairly boring rest of the race. The only final thing to note from this round 3 race at Alton Park was the gap that I was able to grow at the end of the race between me and this driver chasing me down now, as once again the curse of the Alton Park bollard luckily doesn't strike me, but instead the guy behind me, as he's really appeared to be pushing over the past few laps, mistimes it, catches it, and just completely ruins his race and allows me to drive off into the darkness, securing my final position. And ultimately I've been a little bit disappointed with my past 2 performances with this Alton Park and then the Circuit of the Americas, which is the next race in this video, as you see me now coming around for the final lap. And ultimately I've got lots to work on, and unfortunately in these unprecedented times right now with the coronavirus, the one positive of it is I'm able to have a lot more time on my hands, much like everyone else, which will give me an opportunity to really work on those weaknesses. And as you join me now for my Circuit of the Americas hot lap of qualifying, I didn't get too much of a practice on this course, and you can really tell throughout this race there's lots of slight little errors and lack of maximising all the track limits whilst taking advantage of maintaining as much speed as possible. I spend a lot of time sliding the car, which sometimes can be fast in project cars, but ultimately putting it a little bit too on edge lap after lap is going to really wear those tyres down, and that was a huge thing, as obviously COTA, being in America, it's a very hot track, especially when the race starts in the middle of the day at 2 o'clock like it did in this one. It caused the front tyres to absolutely cook. And obviously if you have any incidents during the race, any spins, anything like that, which bit of foreshadowing there, really doesn't bode well for overall track life, as like you've seen in previous videos, you don't really pit in this league and it costs you more to actually pit compared to going out and just making the tyres last. And so obviously the overheating coupled with, you know, racing ultimately really made it a difficult race. As I round the final corner, really careful not to invalidate my lap, as you can see there on P13 with 4 minutes left of the session, I consistently put in laps, but they kept getting invalidated, as this time I was able to cross the line, put myself up into P9, and that is where I'd start. So once again, the same as Alton Park, starting in P9. I've got a pretty decent start here, as you can see me just pulling off. Once again, towards the back of the pack, there's a few less people this week compared to normal, but I figured let's see if we can make some points off the line. Gained a couple positions there by being fairly aggressive, a little bit of door-to-door contact, but nothing major, and it didn't affect either of our races too much, as maybe I left the brake a little bit too late, but luckily got the move done. So going through one of my favourite parts of the track, these like waves almost, because they're not even S's, because there's multiple different corners roll into one that basically turn into straights if you drive it correctly, which is really, really fun to be able to navigate. And we settle into the race here. The McGann behind me really making some nice moves, keeping the pressure on, and my main goal here was just to stay in it, stay in the fight, stay on the back of the slipstream of the main guys for as long as possible. But as you can see, that corner we just went round there, very difficult to consistently get right. And it's a scene of a lot of incidents that have reported from the race, and as you'll see in this video, and also just a really easy place to lose time. As you see, I had a little bit of a look down the inside of me here, and I run wide and he gets the position off me. So once again, a little bit of lack of practice setting in, and really moved on to cost me a position. And this carried on this way in these positions until a little bit later on, as you can see, moving into dusk, and in the background appears, let's describe him as the villain of this video. It's the same person who made a little bit of contact with last race, and there have been reports of him repeatedly making contact with people, but I sorted it out with him man to man after the race, just had a bit of a discussion with him about the situations, just to get his view. As you'll see, we had a prolonged battle from dusk all the way to the final lap throughout this race. As you see here, he's now chasing me down the main straight, closed down the gap to me really nicely, to be fair to him. He is a fast driver. As we come around the corner now, I run slightly wider than usual, and he just gets alongside me almost. And this will be a common sight throughout the rest of the race, is just us two drivers racing as quickly as we can, as close as possible without making contact, and unfortunately at times also make contact, as I get a little bit out of shape there and he slams into the back of me for the first piece of what will be a long and fruitful list of contacts brought upon by him. As you see here, he's still getting tight to me, I'm still trying to push, but the difficulty is really trying to learn to drive both in your mirrors but also in front of you, as you want to be position your car in positions where it makes it hard for him to overtake whilst not compromising your overall speed. And it's really about knowing when to take the chances. As yet another bit of contact comes in, he dives down the inside of me because he takes a different line around that corner and just slams into the side of me and completely spins himself out. But unfortunately at that point, because of the contact, I'd taken a bit of damage, as it was quite a hefty one, and the second piece of contact we'd had this lap. and it unfortunately damaged a bit of my suspension, which meant coming into the final corner, the car just completely gets away from me and I loop it. And at this point I was really frustrated. Anti-stall kicked in, so I had to go and dip the clutch and get the car back running again, which allowed him past me after his spin. And at this point I was a little bit frustrated, as it was an unnecessary contact going into that corner. As he gets, throughout this race, it's quite apparent that he is a little bit of an apex warrior. He sees a space and he tries to dive down for it, even if it doesn't make sense to. And ultimately it costs two people their race, as he makes a little bit of a mistake going around the first corner, and I was able to carry much better speed through this section and started straight back up the inside of him. But not enough to get him out of my slipstream, and unfortunately this gave him a chance to just hang on my coattails a little bit longer, as the car started to slide a little bit more now. And you join us a few laps later when once again, surprise surprise, same corner, comes in and makes contact again. I don't know what it is, we both took different lines around that corner, and he didn't seem to realise that if he took his line the same way that the leading car would take their line, we would make contact. And yet throughout the entire race of it being like this, I tried altering my lines to try and avoid him, and once again, even more contact, even more damage. This is now the fourth or fifth piece of contact we've had in the past two races, and granted the first race was my fault, went a little bit too tight into that corner and touched him slightly, but this race was just a comedy of errors on his behalf, and then repeatedly trying to make contact with me, as he gets a great run out that corner, to be fair to him, but I was able just to send it just up the inside, keep it going, get enough push out of the corner, get enough drive and maintain my position. So at this point, really trying to break the slipstream any way I could, really trying to grow a gap so I didn't have to worry about him hitting me into braking zones, because that was really distracting for me to run a little bit wide there, and bang, once again comes in, hits me in the side. And at this point I was starting to get really frustrated with him. All I wanted to do in this race was just come ahead of him, because he was pushing me, and that part I really respected, just as a desire to get past me, until this happened. And at this point all my respect for him went out the window. The third consecutive lap he's hit me on the same corner by not getting his braking point right, and yet again this time caused me to spin, really damage my front tyres, and ultimately lose a bit of grip, as he picks up a bit of damage as well as he tries to recover from it, and I managed to get past him again, which I didn't really want to be in this place. As you see, I believe that was Andy just taking a little bit of a rest off the track there, and you know, I just wanted to get rid of him at this point. I just wanted to finish my race in peace, but unfortunately that wasn't to be, as he kept pushing, yet another bit of contact, surprise surprise. The man clearly thinks we're racing Dodgems compared to touring cars, but you know, easy mistake to make, I guess. But at this point, the damage I'd sustained from constantly receiving battering after battering from him really started to take its toll, as the car began to just handle so much more erratically, and it was a real challenge to keep it on the track throughout the rest of this race. And as a result, I was really just kind of wanting this race to be over and done with, because I just wanted to bring it home, secure whatever points I could get left, as he pulled off into the distance ahead of me. And as you'll see, I was unable to get past him once again, as despite his severe damage that he's clearly picked up from the constant smashing into me, and unfortunately that left my car in the position where it was so difficult to drive. I was trying to push, I was doing my best to not give up, kept going, but unfortunately it wasn't to be, as you see him there flashing off into the distance, clearly for some reason pleased with his performance. But you know, he got the position at the end ahead of me, and we spoke about it afterwards. He didn't seem to think he did anything wrong, but I just said, you know, next time this happens I'll probably end up reporting him. But you know, it's racing, incidents happen, maybe not to the extent and number in which the incidents happened in this race, but you know, both races I was able to somehow finish P9 So a consistent 4 points, which is nothing to write home about, but at least it's points, and I consolidate this with 4 straight top 10 finishes, with the hope of building on that going into the Red Bull ring this week. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and comment down below how I can get better, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.